In a quiet, rarely patrolled part of Ilm Spaceport, Captain House's mask of a vicious, brutal pirate has slipped completely as he and his co-workers toured his new old ship, the Friendly Welcome. It was like witnessing a little child who found a puppy under a Christmas tree, even though, in the dark, depressing future of Persian Sector, no one really knew what Christmas even was. House wasn't just excited to be back on his old vessel, he was also proud of it. "Oh, and look here, lads," he said to Zala, Varuna and Mr. Card's floating drone. "This here bloodstain is a reminder of a time when my first mate tried to start a mutiny against me. Banged his head on this pipe so long his brain spilled all over the room. And look, the bloody thing is still dented." "Truly, a place of cultural heritage. You can see why it was preserved," Varuna said, but House was too giddy to even listen to her. On that note, why was it preserved? Mr. Card noticed. If Kanta took over your ship, wouldn't her people change everything? Happens all the time when a new captain takes over. "Guess the warlord had a soft spot for our house," Zala said smugly, and House's eyes darted from side to side for a second. "More like she was afraid of what I'll do if I'd ever find out she messed with my precious," he said, gently caressing nearby wall. Like everything here, it was stained from decades, if not centuries of use, though hopefully not all of the stains were blood. Still, as much as his fellow co-workers gave him shit about it, the Friendly Welcome was, well, friendly welcomed into Card Logistics, for it was exactly the kind of escort destroyer they needed to feel just that fair bit safer in the outer edges of the sector, and the very first ship the company had that could be described as combat-focused. Mr. Card, however, didn't seem to be thrilled about it, and aside from some technical questions, he mostly remained silent. "Ship not to your liking, Captain?" House asked at some point during the trip. "Thought you'd enjoy this piece of anarchic engineering." "I do. I just don't like heavy hitters like that in my company. Guns make people cocky and more prone to doing something stupid. I'd much prefer to just keep low profile and avoid troubles simply by sneaking past them." "And that's what we're going to keep doing, boss," Varuna said comfortingly. "But after that pirate ambush long ago, you know it's good to have insurance." "I know, and you're right, it's just... I don't feel comfortable around big warships, that's all." "Good thing I'll be the one in charge of it then," House said with a bright smile. "And on that note, we should celebrate this great and long-awaited reunion. If Kanta's boys didn't even repaint the walls, maybe they didn't find my stash." He approached a seemingly unremarkable part of the wall and tapped it in several places. When that didn't work, he kicked it so hard everyone in the room felt a jolt of pain in their own legs. But it worked. A panel fell off and House dived in, and emerged back few seconds later with a twisted grin on his face and an old, battered helmet in his hands. "Ah, stupid bastards want to play smugglers, but they can't even find a simple stash. My helmet's still here. All I need to power it back up again and I'll be able to pilot this ship from anywhere. And this..." He dived into darkness behind the wall once again. "And this, boys and girls," he said, holding something shiny with reverence like it was some kind of religious relic, "is a bottle of Jangalan winter wine, bottled in '83 and made specifically for King of Westerners himself. Shame it got lost before reaching him." "Wait a second, you were the one who stole it?" Zala said, her eyes wide with shock. "Damn you, House, that was a diplomatic incident. They went to war against hegemony for 2 years over that bottle." "Hey, you all stop looking at me like I'm the villain here," House replied, taking a step back, clutching the bottle to his chest. "All I did was steal a bottle of spiced, fermented grape juice. The real bad guy is the one who started a war over it." "Fair," Varuna said, and everyone reluctantly nodded. "Guess we could keep it as a gift for someone important." "Oh, we could share it when we have a proper reason for celebration," House said with a grin. "Fuck rich people and politicians and their lackeys. Us peons deserve to taste some of the good stuff as well." "Can't argue with that," Zala said, "but honestly I'm more interested, and concerned, about the weapons on this ship. Surely I'm not the only one who thinks this is a bit of an overkill for a vessel that size. How the hell does this thing even fly in combat?" "Slowly. House said with a smile, like a proud father presenting achievements of his child. And very, very carefully. I think we used to be the only pirate crew out there with more safety regulations than actual national navies, but fuck me, are they worth it for the guns. And the guns were, indeed, very impressive. The centerpiece was a massive autocannon, the kind you could find on a full-fledged battleship. Over a quarter of the entire ship has to be gutted and rebuilt from scratch to house it, and even now, in inactive state, its power and stability readings were all over the place. You could use it to give ship designers nightmares. The second gun was almost equally as large flak cannon, a simple weapon capable of spewing clouds of shrapnel all over the place. House proudly stated that he and his techs refitted it so it could shoot whatever garbage was on hand, and mused how efficient and ecological such trash recycling could be. "Best part is this baby though," he said, tapping weapons console on the bridge. "Proximity charge launcher. This scrap heap ain't that fast, but launch a few of those mines in front of a merchant, and they have to turn back right into your loving embrace." It was, in short, a quintessential pirate vessel. Loud, obnoxious, and equally as dangerous to its own crew as to any unfortunate victims out there. Fortunately, because it was so customized already, Mr. Cat had no issues finding a way to install his own signature scrambler, to make this murder machine at least a bit more stealthy. The trip continued for another few minutes, but when House descended into entire excited tirade about ambushing trade convoys, Varuna felt like they needed a change of subject. "Your ship is very impressive, House, and I see why you're proud of it," she said. "But it's not the only new one we have. Zella, how do you feel about your new command? I heard our secretive client get a proper destroyer for you as well." It's a brick with engines and weapons strapped to it," the old pather shrugged, but a smile slowly appeared on her face. "But it doesn't explode and has showers installed, so it's better than pretty much everything I flew back on the path. Decent weapon setup too. Doesn't sport such big fuck-off murder gun as House's ship, but it has a mine launcher of its own. Feels very precision-focused though. Single-shot mass drivers, guided torpedoes. I'm more used to ramming speed and pressing a big red button that launches a swarm of dumbfire rockets at whatever pool 4 is in front of me. I'll make it work though, no worries. It's just the name is, well, what can I say? It doesn't really fit the rest of our ships. All except one, to be more precise. This new ship was named by Midnight Dissonant, their mysterious client, as well, and she called it Moonlight Paradox. Everyone cringed when saying this name out loud. Mr. Cart tried to convince the AI to change the name, but Midnight was relentless. She got them the ship, she said, so she was well within her rights to name it. "Well, you know how it is," Mr. Cart said to Zala. "Maybe our client likes poetry and this too much. The important thing is that it works and you know how to fly it. As of now, both you and House are our main security operators. Consider this a paid promotion," he added, and even over the comms you could hear the boss recoiling with pain at his own words. House just wordlessly opened the bottle of wine that started the war and downed a quarter of it in one go. Then he handed it to Zala. "Cheers, Captain. The missus gonna be happy to hear it. And do you like your third ship, by the way?" "Yep, does what I wanted it to do," Mr. Cat replied, for there was not much else to say. The third vessel was just a large cargo freighter, basically a set of containers welded together and glued to a command office and engines. Zero combat functionality, but plenty of space to carry stuff, which was precisely what Cart Logistics needed during their jobs for the Academy. Now granted, they didn't need all that space to bring stuff back to Galatia, but the Provost did send them into far reaches of Persian sector, and as they have learned during their previous trips beyond the core worlds, one could find a ton of ancient valuables there, if you just looked hard enough, and if you were not afraid of terrors lurking in the dark. And so, Cart Logistics, with its new fancy ships in tow, soon departed Ilm and set course for distant stars. However, they would take a small detour first, as their secret client wanted them to deliver a package to a dead drop few light years away. Interestingly, it was not a lie. Midnight Dissonant really wanted Mr. Cart to drop something off there, a small sensor satellite which would, hopefully, detect any remnants nearby and send them Midnight's peaceful instructions. She had very little hope it would actually work, but the star system she had in mind was on the way, so there was no point in arguing. It was simple enough job. Leave the core, fly for a few days, drop off the satellite in a seemingly unremarkable spot. But on the way out of the system, Cart Logistics, like magpies they were, was distracted by a shiny object on their sensors, an ancient domain-era probe that orbited the local star. These probes were basically large, self-sustaining factory/exploration ships sent in ancient past by human domain to survey the stars and find new places for humanity to colonize. They could operate in the void of space for thousands of cycles, and once they reached their destination, they turned into small, stationary industrial bases which prospected and prepared local area for arrival of the colonists. But they were sent out into the void long, long ago, so long that by now even those resilient machines were mostly reduced to scrap, or salvaged by remnants of post-collapse humanity. Some, however, were still out there, and finding one was bound to be profitable. Unfortunately, as Cart Logistics was about to learn, these probes were not entirely happy to be scrapped by random strangers. "Captain, we have multiple incoming signatures," Herr Ludwig said from his ship as the fleet approached the seemingly derelict vessel. "And there seem to be weapon signatures there." "The hell? This is an exploration probe, why the hell is it armed?" Jesselton asked, sending red alert all over the comms. All around him the bridge erupted with activity. "'Cause they expected to find something unfriendly out there," Mr. Cart said. "And they were right, they found us. There's just a handful of old automated combat drones, we can take them. How's Zala, time to test your toys. Varuna, want to remotely take control of Midnight Dissonant?" "Of course, boss," she replied, and then quietly, on a personal line, added, "She's okay with that?" She was the one who proposed it. "Well, get your helmet on, we're going in." "Oh, I missed violence," House said from his ship, and he and Zala rushed to meet the incoming drones. But that violence didn't exactly go the way they wanted. "I forgot how slow this thing was," House complained over the comm a few minutes later, as both his and Zala's ships got overtaken by smaller, more maneuverable frigates like Midnight Dissonant and aptly named Meat Shield, a fast, vicious little ship piloted by House's more suicidal friends. "We don't plan on rushing them blindly so you'll have plenty of opportunities to shoot something," Varuna said, and then looked at her sensors, and her eyes went wide. "Boss, are you joining as well? Thought you hated being in battle." "I do. I hate it with a passion," Mr. Cart said weakly, trying to hide shakiness in his voice. Then he switched to a private comm. "It's Midnight's idea. She said she ran simulations and there's no chance of us sustaining any damage." "If only I knew all it takes to convince you it's a smart computer," Varuna sighed, but still punched in a quick message to the AI. "Keep safe, boss. We'll get it done before you know it." Mr. Cart didn't say anything, but instead covered his eyes. When he opened them a few minutes later, loud noises of the battle were gone, replaced by cheers of the crew heard over the comms. Midnight's face appeared on one of the screens, with a bright, cheerful smile on it. "Reporting combat finished with 0 casualties and no damage to our side, Pilot Cart. The drones were armed, but it's clear they've been here for centuries, maybe even more. Radiation and space debris dealt most of the damage over that time. We just delivered the finishing blow. The fleet performed at expected, that is to say decent, efficiency. There is lots to improve, especially amongst the crew, but I can prepare pointers to be given to them." "I do not plan to make this a habit, Midnight," Mr. Cart said, still sweating from stress under his suit. Being in combat, hearing weapons firing and loud thuds as incoming projectiles struck shields and armor was too much for him. Others, however, seemed to take it a lot better, and he could hear House and Zala already boasting who took down more drones in this fight. Even Varuna seemed rather proud of herself, especially since it's been a while since she last was in charge of a warship. "Alright people, quiet down and get back to work. Don't start thinking you're hot shit just cause you blasted a few ancient tin cans," the boss said over the comm, and the celebration silenced, or at least moved away from the comm rooms. "House, you take your salvagers and see if you can pull something out of the scrap metal. Varuna, Ludwig, Zala, I want you to run maintenance teams. Judging by the ship's computers, we need them." And indeed, even though the fight was seemingly easy and painless, it still put a strain on ships that took part in it. In truth, most vessels operated only at a fraction of their capacity during their everyday journeys. All you needed were engines and life support and you were good to go. In combat, however, a lot more systems had to be turned on, most notably weapons and shields, which put a major strain on reactors. Oversized guns and friendly welcome were unruly as well. They only fired a few times during the fight, each time with thunderous effect, but the sheer force of their recoil bent parts and rivets out of shape. Every fight, even easiest one, was a nightmare for maintenance engineers, and Mr. Cart made a mental note to give them another day or two of shore leave when they returned back to civilization. And on his part, House soon reported that the probe was indeed completely dead. The drones were just cycling on a backup solar battery, and now nothing else worked, so the salvagers could get to work. It was a decent haul, mostly in form of machinery and scrap metal, but also some still operational weapons and old but still perfectly preserved parts, manufactured ages past in one of Domaine's grand shipyards. The same maintenance engineers who groaned at added work were now gleefully rummaging through these parts, already wondering how to use them to replace unreliable, jerry-rigged systems on their own vessels. Aside from that though, there was nothing else to do in this system, so as soon as every bit of ancient drone was reduced to scrap and thrown into ships' foundries, Cart Logistics departed and continued along their way to fulfill their jobs for the Academy. Or, to be more precise, they tried to do so, because a few days later their comms pick up a hasty, panicked signal coming in from one of the star systems on the way, a distress call. "It's probably a trap. It's almost always a trap," House said, but didn't object when Mr. Cart set a course for the system. "You're right," the boss replied, "but we have to see. Besides, the signal has only been going on for a few hours, according to the sensors. Maybe some other explorer just ran out of fuel." "Or maybe some scout spotted us and set up a bait," Zala said, but didn't refuse either. "Good thing we have that scrambler of yours, Chief." As soon as she said that, the entire fleet went dark and quietly glided the last few minutes towards the jump point. Everyone braced for the nauseating, surreal feeling of leaving hyperspace, and for incoming fire, but no such thing happened. Instead, collision alarms started blaring on every ship. "What do you know, it was an ambush," House said, "but not for us, it seems." All around them, broken, cold remains of ships slowly drifted around the jump point. They were fresh. Heat didn't even have time to fully dissipate from them, a telltale sign of a battle that took place mere few hours ago. But there was nothing moving here now, for, according to the sensors, the action has moved deeper into the system. Poor bastards," Mr. Cart said, thanking once again for his stealthy fleet setup. On the screen, he could see two groups of ships engaged in, well, not really a battle. It was more of a slaughter. Two large groups of old warships were ganging on a smaller fleet of mostly civilian vessels, probably remnants of the fight around the jump point. At this point, though, even if Cart Logistics sprang into action right away, there was nothing they could do. One by one, civilian signatures went dark, too far away to offer them any assistance. "House, they're your kind of people?" Zara tried. "Can you use your pirate whispering to tell them to back off? Or at least explain what the hell is going on here?" "I can try, but I don't really recognize those ships, nor those signatures. But fuck it. Jesselton, can you try and lock into their comms? Preferably without them knowing about it." "Already on it, Captain," the young Luddite said. As Mr. Cat mentioned, he was getting really good at his job. Amazing what people can do when they're allowed to gain experience and not die in a stupid way. "We're in, but do take a lesson for yourselves." He sent audio transmissions between pirate ships to every speaker in the fleet. The sounds that could be heard were impossible to describe in a civilized way. Few seats away from Jesselton, a young pilot listened for 10 seconds and then rushed off, vomiting her food rations all over the bridge. "Yeah, I don't think we can get through them, Captain," House said. "Should have guessed from the state of their ships. They must all be Starstrike howlers by now." "So it sounds," Mr. Cat replied weakly. "Jesselton, we get the picture. Please shut it down." In a blessed silence that followed, Varuna could hear a few followers of Lud muttering prayers on the bridge, and this once decided to not intervene. They were not common, these mad spacers, and some didn't really believe they existed at all, but the very thought they could be out there was enough to keep many explorers and salvagers on edge during long, boring shifts. Sure, there were pirates back in the core systems as well, but those were chill, relaxed, economic pirates. If you gave them your stuff, they would usually leave you the hell alone. These ones, however, long years or sometimes even decades away from civilization, and being stuck in hyperspace for months on end, turned these people into something worse. It was as if their minds unraveled from this separation from the rest of humanity and reverted to utter barbarism. Some of them worshipped their ships. Some of them prayed to the stars. Some created deranged little kingdoms where the king often changed several times a week, when one raider murdered another. They all had one thing in common though. Meeting them would always lead to mindless, chaotic violence, and not even someone like House could hope to intimidate them into backing off. It was far safer to not even let them notice you, and so Cart Logistics did just that, and kept their signature scrambler chugging along 24/7. "Looks like they've finished their fight. Let's see what they do, people," Mr. Cart said after the battle took place. "Maybe they'll get distracted by something shiny and we could check out that debris field they left. There may be survivors." "I hope there are none, Captain. Better to die than get captured by hyperspace madmen." But the pirates, as it turned out, seemed disinterested in robbing corpses of their victims. They lingered for an hour or two after blowing up last civilian ship, and then they went deeper into the system, and moments later another distress call was sounded, no doubt set up by the raiders to attract yet another hapless victim. Some of the crewmates grumbled about exacting vengeance on the Star-mad fleet, but it was just idle complaining. Even though pirate ships were old and battered, they outnumbered Cart Logistics 3-1, and there could be even more lurking deeper in the system. "We can't risk chasing them," Mr. Cart said. "We have to stay quiet and hope they won't spot us. We'll check that debris field now that they have moved on, and then I want to take a look at those stations we saw on approach." What he meant were two massive orbitals, all located in a gas giant system. The first one was a mining station, old one, clearly built by Old Domain. It was also dark. No one was alive there for decades by now, and the pirates might have been the reason, as outer sections of the station were heavily damaged and open to vacuum. With the pirates far away, House agreed to take his salvagers in, and the sheer wealth of raw materials they found there was so overwhelming that they couldn't hope to bring it all back to the fleet. What's worse, their scrapping operation was too much for the battered station to handle, and the salvagers barely managed to escape with their cargo as the orbital slowly fell apart, spilling tens of thousands tons of minerals into the void. Midnight Dissident emotionlessly remarked that in a month or two they would all drift into the gas giant below them and be lost forever, but at least the salvagers were safe, and they managed to bring a decent haul back anyway. The second station, however, was far more interesting, as it was a habitat ring. What's more, small internal section was still functional inside, and a weak signal broadcasted from it. And, to surprise of everyone, it seemed to play music. It did so on the loop though, and no one responded from inside. So, aside from salvagers, House asked to bring a group of tough crewmates to keep everyone safe. "I'll get them organized in a moment, House," Varuna said over the comm. "They'll go with you and make sure your scrappers are okay. I'll check the signal inside." "You sure about that, Missy?" the pirate asked, but he didn't sound surprised by it. "Could be dangerous there. Could be another trap." "Possibly, yes. But I can guarantee you, once I'm on board, the most dangerous thing inside will be me." No one could really argue with that, especially not those who witnessed firsthand how Varuna fought, and the crew soon departed to the station, which, just like the mining ring, housed an entire warehouse full of goods. Salvage teams immediately rushed to bring them back to the fleet, while Varuna flew her shuttle all the way to one of the still operational airlocks. She wandered there, silent and alone, through ruined corridors and forgotten rooms, always on edge and always expecting an attack. Dust slowly swirled in her wake, and her shoes left imprints in pools of long-dried blood. Once or twice she could swear she saw movement in the corner of her eye, but every time she turned, she saw nothing. Some people would dread going into a place like this alone. Who knows what secrets this ancient stations might hold after all, but Varuna took it in stride. She was made for solo missions, so she allowed her training to take over, while also appreciating the fact she could actually turn back whenever she wanted without risking wrath of her former corporate superiors. Finally, 2 hours later, she called Mr. Cart and the rest of the officers back. "It's just corpses there, boss. I didn't find much, but the intact part of the station contained the main control room," she said. "I found a corpse there, pretty much a skeleton at this point, in tattered white uniform. Must have been the last man standing on the station. Also, I found his audio log. Here, let me show you." She flicked some file onto their screens, and a tired voice of a man could be heard talking, with loud bangs and gunshots in the background. "And so here I sit, the last domain officer, and maybe even the last non-insane human being still alive today. As I speak, the raiders are rampaging through the halls, destroying and killing everything in their path. We tried to defend ourselves, but there's only so much we could have done with our limited numbers against such mindless ferocity. But it looks like our plan worked. We annoyed these madmen enough that they docked all their ships here to kill us. All I have to do is press this button and the station core reactor will detonate, taking all of us out in a fireball, so at least our people down on the planet should be safe. I just wish we could have done things differently. Our ancestors survived shutdown of the gates and subsequent chaos and starvation. We rebuilt, we continued traditions of the domain, and now I have to watch it all fall down because we were curious. I knew we never should have agreed to that expedition. I knew we never should have left the system. But how could we have known that there were people still out there? And how could we have known that they were mad, bloodthirsty savages? I'm monologuing. Goddamn alcohol. Let's just get this over with. This is Captain... and here you are. Oi, you thought them wee doors would stop us, pretty boy? Damn, look at them fancy fob in his pearly white rugs. They's gonna look good on me once I'm done tearing them off your corpse, Gramps. You will do no such thing, savage. Go to hell. And once you're there, tell them the last officer of the human domain sent you, and then apologize on my behalf for the inconvenience. A loud noise could be heard in the recording afterwards, which soon turned to static. Everyone stared at the blank recording in silence. "Well, guess we now know why most of the station was so messed up," Zala finally said. "That must have been some explosion." "Not big enough, unfortunately," Varuna shook her head. "It didn't blow up the entire section where this captain was, and this whole bunch of pirates who found him. Shook them off their feet though, and he had enough sense to shoot himself once he realized he didn't kill everyone. They would have taken their time killing him. I found some surveillance footage from security cams, and let's just say these howlers were inventive." "Worse still, it looks like his plan didn't help people on the surface," Mr. Cart added over the comm. "From what we've seen, it's all ruins down there." "And the howlers are still out there, luring in more victims." Zala said. Guess Domain lost its last battle. Everyone went silent for a moment, digesting these news. A minute later, Herr Ludwig unexpectedly took the comm. We could still try and fix this. Sensors show there's a comm array in this system. If we could fix it, we could send warning to all Persian sector to stay away, and maybe even call some authorities to get rid of these murderers. I think this is the one time I'm okay with snitching, House said. I'll take my people. We should have enough smart brains to get a relay going once we reach it. We'll try to get it done quickly then, Mr. Katz said, and already started plotting a new course, while flicking a generous amount of bonus money into Corp Drone's account. And with that, there was nothing more to do but to fix the comm relay and get the hell out of the system before wild, rampaging pirates decided to randomly fly in their direction. And this time, Mr. Cart hoped, maybe he and his company could actually finally do their jobs without being distracted every few minutes. But of course, no plan can survive contact with the real world, and real world still had some surprises left in store for this small logistics company. For they were about to meet even more people in the void. A very special kind of people.